Here's the story of 6 buying experts who were very successful in their jobs, leading procurement offices across the country, from Alaska and PA to Arkansas. Then one day when we pressed the recording button, while talking about issues over lunch, our team call somehow became a podcast. That's the way we all became the buying bunch, the buying bunch, the buying bunch. That's the way we became the buying bunch.
Welcome to the Buying Bunch. We are a group of former public procurement professionals talking about issues that really matter to our industry. And today we're going to be talking about how to understand about the performance history of your suppliers in this COVID era, which is obviously very important. We, as a community, we are all learning about how to work from home and how to use tools like Zoom. And that means that there are times when we've had conference calls, video calls with kids coming into our pictures, dogs barking, images that are a little bit pixelated, and people who are talking for minutes on end while they're on mute. And so you will probably see during today's call that we are experiencing some of those same and interesting fun challenges from working from home. So as we are in this new era, in this coronavirus era, I'm interested in your thoughts, guys, on how this era is different than buying goods and services under normal circumstances.
Well, in the past, when we had emergencies, and we've all experienced those, even when there was a break in the supply chain, other areas of the country were able to pitch in to help us. So, for example, if we have a hurricane or a tornado or something in our areas, and we were able to count on our suppliers and other government entities outside. But today, it's affecting the entire world. So it's really been very difficult on everyone.
And I think there's some degree too that while there is some federal support and some state support, there really is almost every community in this for themselves. And it's creating some real challenges in the traditional public procurement buying role, in that you're competing with your peers or other agencies who may have more leverage. So it's really trying to create this outbidding situation for critical supplies across the board, as you're all experiencing already.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because normally it's the suppliers who are competing with each other for our business, and now it feels more like we ourselves are competing for supplies.
Well, and then you compound it by having everyone working from home. You know, our suppliers are working, our staffs are working. Most government people are not used to working from home. If you needed a file at the office, there's no way to get to it. So there are a lot of challenges that people are dealing with that, including interruptions when they are at home.
And I think the other point to bring in within the supply chain argument is that both the suppliers and the vendors are feeling this as well. They're really strapped to get any inventory, as well as the challenges in terms of fraud or other misappropriations happening by illicit vendors, vendors who aren't used to dealing with the government.
It's interesting when you talked about the sort of challenges of working from home. Tell me more about that. Like, what is if you can't just walk down the hall and talk to your lawyer or talk to one of your buyers, how does that present a unique challenge in this time period?
I think you just end up spending a lot more time coordinating that communication. You know, who's going to call who, set up a Zoom meeting, do we set up a go-to, can we just, do it over email? I think you spin your wheels trying to just figure that out. Not to mention the logistics of, a file that's physically located somewhere that you can't get to. That makes it rough.
Yeah, it feels like there's a need for speed to do transactions now more than ever. Is that, you guys hearing that?
Sure. Yeah, to top it off, a lot of these suppliers are requiring prepayment, which is something we haven't really done either. And it's not just a minor amount of prepayment. It can be significant in some cases. And if you can't make that happen quickly, then the supplies are gone.
Yeah, I would add to that, to kind of summarize that. I look at it as a lot of the procurement rules and policies and processes, which generally provide the foundation for how procurement operates, have been suspended for the most part, which opens the door for any supplier to reach out to the governments and to schools and offer their services. And since governments are very desperate right now for supplies, and since the rules have been relaxed and those processes aren't right in front of them, and they can't just pick up or walk down the hall and talk to a colleague, they're more open to listening to what those suppliers have to offer, and less likely to do their normal due diligence and just accept what those suppliers have to offer.
Yeah, Mike, it's interesting. With the rules suspended because of the emergency, it does change our process, right? So rather than going out to bid and telling the whole world we're going to be buying PPE or ventilators, we may be going to just one supplier without any kind of a competition. What challenge does that present for us?
Well, yeah, you go into one supplier. I mean, just procurement in general does due diligence, and normally works with suppliers that they have a good feeling about, that they've vetted, that they've done research on, that they've done reference checks on, that they know very well will deliver the goods and services. And in this environment, they're basically getting a call from a supplier. The supplier says, I have these masks, I have these PPEs, I have this equipment that you need. Where do you want it delivered? Here's how much it's going to cost you. And mentioned earlier, the need for speed has played a big role. The suspended or relaxed rules has played a role. They're working from home. They don't have their colleagues around them, and they're told, we need this stuff now. We need this equipment now. And they're making decisions that they wouldn't normally have made in the past to utilize these suppliers.
Right. It seems like, a lot of suppliers are coming out of nowhere, right? Like you said. So, what kind of challenge does that present to have to try to make a deal, buy something almost on the spot from a company you've never heard of?
Well, I think it makes it more challenging, not just because you can't vet the supplier, but you can't vet the quality of the items that they're sending to you. And a lot of these items are not items that we are typically very familiar with. So it presents a challenge in a lot of areas.
And depending on where you are, another wrinkle to that is it may not be somebody very well steeped in public procurement that's actually, making these decisions. And so they don't know, what would we typically look for? What's our typical process for vetting somebody? They may just be pulling the trigger because it sounds like a good deal.
And there's a sense of desperation.
And I would also add, I think it's really shifting the relationship where governments, either leveraged as a group or large governments, were able to really make the price work or make the delivery terms at their benefit. In this instance, it's entirely upside down. You have large counties that are paying air freight and chartering their own airlines to get things from China, with everything else we've already mentioned in terms of no inspections, no guarantees, and unusual payment terms, to say the least, including wire transfers and refusal to take P-card.
Yeah, I think Jason MacDonald, you were telling me about a government in California that had a real challenge during this time period with a particular supplier.
Yeah, within the first couple of days of the crisis, as this county activated their EOC, they received a call for N95 masks available at their behest, whatever the amount was they needed. And they said, excellent, let's put together a PO. We'll have a P card number for you. And the caller stopped and said, no, you'll need to wire transfer it today. And as soon as they offered P card and said, we can't wire transfer, the line went dead and there was no further follow-up. So those bad actors are being vetted out and ferreted out, but they are definitely in the marketplace trying to take advantage of the situation.
Yeah, and this is, I think, one of the great challenges for procurement in this time period. You have, as Jason Soza mentioned, you have non-procurement professionals making these decisions. We have to make decisions on the spot because of the desperation to find critical goods and services. and we're using suppliers that we've never heard of before and never used before. And this critically important task of really being able to vet our suppliers is what led us at Procurement to create the COVID Vendor Check. COVID Vendor Check is a completely free tool that we built as a public service at the beginning of the pandemic, as a place for governments, schools, and healthcare institutions to report on the performance of COVID-19 suppliers. In this private, secure community, they can share their supplier experiences, good or bad. Did a supplier really go the extra mile in helping you secure N95 masks? Or did the vendor try to scam the government by shipping uncertified masks or taking your money and not shipping anything at all? Users can come to the site and search for reviews about these suppliers so they can find great suppliers who will support them in these challenging times and avoid bad actors. And our commitment to the procurement community is to make access to COVID Vendor Check free throughout the duration of this crisis. Please share your experiences at procurated.com/COVID, and thank you for all you're doing to keep the rest of us safe.